Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today on the show, public radio stations, including WDET, just lost already approved federal funding. And Detroit's airwaves may never sound the same.
NPR's Tanya Mosley reminds us why WDET's vibrant, fearless journalism matters now more than ever.
Plus, life is expensive in Detroit, and financial stress is real. Now, young Detroiters are learning to teach each other how to win the battle for their budgets.
Also, we'll unpack the legendary dynamic between two of WDET's most iconic music selectors, Andalisi and Don Was. They join us ahead of their WDET bowling fundraiser happening tonight.
But first, it's no secret Detroit is at a turning point. Mayor Mike Duggan is on his way out. And soon, a new group of city leaders will enter the fray. But will these leaders and their appointees truly represent the needs of everyday Detroiters? That's exactly what the Detroit City Appointments Project is working on. It's trying to recruit and vet residents who want to serve under Detroit's next mayor, whoever that might be. Now, this project is about more, though, than just finding qualified people. It's about finding leaders committed to fairness, equity, and accountability to Detroit's neighborhoods. It's led by longtime organizer Maurice Weeks, who believes these roles in local government can be transformational. In other words, the people who take these city positions can either continue old inequities or they can break them down. Maurice Weeks joins us now to talk about this project, what's at stake for Detroit, and how Detroiters can shape who leads their city next. Maurice, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Robin. It's really great to be here.
So before we look at some of the roles you're recruiting for, I want to get some context. Your background is rooted in economic and racial justice organizing. You've tackled systemic exploitation in communities across the country. How does that experience inform your vision for shaping city leadership?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, I most recently come from a national organization that I co-founded called the Action Center on Race and the Economy. And what we were doing there is really looking at, inequities that exist in this country and how they're all rooted in the same sort of economic and racial justice problems. And I think when we look here in Detroit at our city, a lot of residents would say the same things. You know, you see Detroiters struggling looking for jobs or struggling with housing or unequal development in different parts of the city. And those are all things that come from sort of historical inequities that have existed in the city and this country. So, I believe really strongly personnel is policy. And if we're going to have policy that changes those things, it means that we have to have the right people in office and the people around them who can do that. So
we're going to dig into that phrase, personnel is policy, in a moment. But as you're describing Detroit, it has me wondering, so you have identified some common threads that you've seen in a lot of other communities nationwide when it comes to historical inequities. Are there things that strike you that feel particularly unique about Detroit or uncommon?
Yeah. I think one really important thing about this city is that it really is a black city. I mean, like, we are a majority black city, one of the last few remaining. And the changes that have occurred really are making that a little bit less harder to see on a day-to-day basis. Our black population is going down significantly, and I think a lot of folks in some of the outer neighborhoods feel as if development has been focused more on downtown than on some of the other neighborhoods that might be, almost entirely black. So, that definitely makes a huge difference, especially when you think about things like how 375 changed the shape and feel of lots of our neighborhoods. So, yeah, I think that's really the main difference. Other than that, we're across the country. I think folks in cities are dealing with really similar problems. I'm not sure you can find anywhere in the country that says that housing is easy and affordable, or that jobs are easy to get and, numerous. Cities are all sort of going through the same economic crisis at the same time.
And so that brings us to some of the positions then that you're recruiting and vetting for, because that's how you see our city making some meaningful change, making a dent in things like the housing crisis. Could you give us an idea of exactly what kind of city positions you're trying to vet and recruit for?
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said at the top, whoever the mayor is going to be is immediately going to have this job of filling out an enormous staff. I mean, there's just a lot of folks who work in the mayor's office and work directly for the mayor. And those positions are extremely powerful, even if they're not directly elected. So things like directing the planning and development department, which really, looks at the city overall and decides where some of the changes, where some of the building, where some of the focus in development is put, is a major thing. Housing and revitalization, sort of in the same category. But even outside of that, I mean, positions that we might not think about as often, like positions in the financial office, those are the folks who really set the budget, and everything kind of flows from the budget in this city. So recruiting folks who have that expertise, but also have a commitment to the common good is extremely important. We have lots of folks I hear on this network all of the time talking about our struggles with transit in the city. That's another really major area. Things like the Department of Transportation or even the Department of Health. These are all city positions that are crucially, vitally important for Detroiters. So we really tried to take an overall look at the city and everything that would affect someone who is low income and working class in the city. What agencies affect them, and how can we get folks in those positions who are fighting for the common good and fighting for the average Detroiter?
Let's talk about the kinds of folks then that you're trying to get into these positions, because when you talk about planning and what the city might look like, when you talk about the budget, when you talk about housing, what are the types of ideologies and backgrounds that you're looking for? Yeah.
The background is really important. I like to say I'm very passionate about housing, but I should not be in charge of actually planning or development, right? Like, I don't have the expertise that someone who might have a background in that or a degree specifically in urban planning has. So one is just expertise. And we know, despite the narratives, that there's a ton of talent in the city. I mean, we're home to in the proximity of several major research universities. They're all really, really great. We know that those folks are here in the city, and we don't have to look outside for amazing talent. So having a good set of expertise and experience, and then also a proven commitment to the common good. And the way we define that is, are you fighting for an average everyday neighbor of yours, or are you looking towards corporations or other big entities that might not need as much help actually to get what they need in the city? So folks who have the expertise, the resume that really qualifies them for those positions, but then also, a commitment to fighting the fights that we know that the average Detroiter needs.
So in other words, you're not looking for people who have really close ties, let's say, with powerful businesses and powerful organizations. You're looking for people who have close ties with their neighborhoods, who have shown that they are interfacing and interacting with everyday folks and trying to make a difference in their lives.
That's exactly right. I think that, the folks who have those really close ties to business, there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm sure that there are a lot of those folks who will end up in the next administration no matter what. Business has always had a really close relationship with the mayor's office, and that will continue. Part of our project is making sure that there's a counterbalance to that. That there are some folks who, their first thought is, how is this going to affect my neighbor in the far east of the city or something like that.
Let's talk about the process of appointing folks itself, because residents often raise concerns about systemic barriers. I'm thinking about whether they might be racial or economic that can potentially prevent qualified, committed Detroiters from being appointed to key city roles. From your perspective, what are the most pressing barriers within the current appointment system, and how do you plan to dismantle them?
Yeah. I would say one of the main barriers is that it's pretty obscure, the process. After a mayor, first off, we haven't had a new mayor elected in quite some time, so a lot of things will be new in this election. But normally after a mayor is elected, there's sort of this black box that occurs where, from it, a few weeks later emerges all of these people who
Where did they come from?
Who are appointed into these positions, right? Yeah. And lots of them had relationships with the mayor before, or have been suggested by business that might have had a close relationship with getting the mayor elected. So what we want to do is try and, take some of that obscurity away and demystify the process a little bit. We would basically create this list of folks who are qualified, put that in front of the new mayor as a resource, and have folks' qualifications listed readily, so we can the new mayor can see how great of a hiring list that they potentially have, and then do in the transition process. Do some real vetting of those candidates themselves. Obviously, we're not hiring anyone. It's all up to whoever the new mayor is. And we're really confident that with the list that we are going to be able to create, that some of the Detroiters that we get on those lists are going to be the most qualified candidates. We're hoping to break down those barriers like that.
This is The Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Robin Vincent. We're talking about the people who could end up being appointed by Detroit's next mayor, what's at stake, and how you can get involved. Our guest is Maurice Weeks. He leads the Detroit City Appointments Project. Now, we have been talking about Mayor Duggan a little bit here and there, and one thing I want to address with Duggan is that he's faced criticism for appointing non-Detroit residents to some of these key roles that you're recruiting and vetting for, Maurice. So let's talk about why it matters that the people in these positions live in the same community that they're overseeing. Yeah.
That's a really good question and such a valid criticism of the mayor. I think that folks who, a phrase you often hear is the folks who come up with the solution should be the ones who are closest to the problem. It's just a different thing if you're going through an issue yourself on a day-to-day basis, what solutions you might come up with to fix the problem. So, having someone who works in the Department of Transportation, who is really familiar with Detroit's bus system and Detroit's transit issues as a whole, makes a huge difference. It would be a very different thing for someone to come in maybe from a larger, different metropolitan area and say, oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, than someone who is really intimately familiar with the specific issues that affect Detroit. The people closest to the problems are always the ones who have the best solutions. We don't want to have solutions that might have, unexpected adverse impacts on our neighbors. And the only folks who can really, truly, deeply know that are folks who are here, who are actually experiencing those issues themselves. Now, I know that lots of folks move to this city. I wasn't born in this city. I moved here, and I love it here. I'm never leaving here. So it's by no means saying that no one can ever come in. You have to be born in Detroit to serve in Detroit. But it is a different thing to have someone who is brought in from many states over just to run a specific part of our government with almost no experience of the city. That really does make a huge difference.
So you want people who are invested in the city.
Absolutely, yeah. Invested in the city, living here, have a deep connection here. Even if they're not living here right now, there are lots of folks who grew up in Detroit, maybe went to one of our schools here, and then moved away to go to graduate school or for a particular job, who, with all the excitement in the city, are looking to come back. And those folks are great folks who could potentially serve in the government as well.
You've spoken about something called a liberation economy. And I want to look at that in regards to people that you're looking for. It's where economic systems empower rather than exploit. Discuss how that really works into into your vision when it comes to vetting and recruiting people. You want candidates who align with this, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely. Liberation economy. I think it's a phrase that even if it's not something specifically, those words that folks are saying is something that Detroiters are feeling a lot right now. And wanting the freedom to make their own economic decisions and not to have them imposed, and to not be exploited by folks who might have way more money or way more power. So, when I think about something like the redesigning the 375 and Black Bottom neighborhoods, what that looks like is really going to determine whether, we're moving towards a liberation economy or away from one. Like, are the folks who were impacted by that going to be able to themselves decide what this new vision looks like, what kind of businesses, what kind of economy exists there? Or is it going to be imposed upon them by some other force? When we're scouting candidates especially for positions that might have, direct face with the economy, like things like housing and redevelopment, like our finance department's financial strategy and management. We're looking for folks who, again, maybe they're not using that phrase, but have that mindset that we want folks to be able to set their own economic determination and have a city that sort of works for them.
And when you are finding these folks and thinking, okay, this is exactly the type of person who's really going to fight for and speak with and for Detroiters, then the next step, of course, is engaging mayoral candidates.
That's right.
Is anyone on board with using your vetted people post-election?
So we're, just staying out of the current fray that exists, and I should just state that this is an entirely non-partisan and candidate agnostic. We're providing this as a resource for whoever the next mayor will be. So what I'm hoping for, I will say, is that when either we're down to the top two candidates or when the next mayor is elected, they will look at the city and say to themselves that they really want to appoint folks who are speaking to the moment and speaking to everyday Detroiters, and take advantage of this amazing resource that we've created that has, over 100 qualified candidates, and likely will be more by the time the new mayor is elected, to give to them.
You have that now, over 100, or
yeah, amazingly.
Really?
So we if folks go to DetroitCityAppointementsProject.com, you can see an area where folks can either nominate themselves or another person, or apply themselves for one of these positions. Through that, and also suggestions specifically from some community organizations. We've gotten lots of suggestions of very qualified, very great folks who could serve in the next city's government. So yes.
That's DetroitCityAppointementsProject.com.
That's right.
And in the last 30 seconds we have here, how are you going to hold appointed officials accountable beyond the initial selection?
Yeah, we hope to stay in contact with the folks that we have suggested and who ended up getting appointed, and to keep them in contact with each other too, right? Because we've all been in a situation where it can be lonely in a particular job if you are new and don't necessarily know that folks align with you. So we plan on staying in really close contact with them, and making sure that they're serving the common good and serving the everyday Detroiter.
Maurice Weeks leads the Detroit City Appointments Project. You can find more information at DetroitCityAppointementsProject.com. Thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks.
This is the Metro on WDET. Last week, President Trump and Congress revoked all federal funding for public media. That totals $1 billion that was previously approved by Congress. It would have gone to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. These cuts are a significant hit to WDET. We used to receive hundreds of thousands of dollars from CPB every year. Now, the station isn't going anywhere, but locally produced programs like the Metro, what you're listening to right now, are at risk. There is something you can do, though. WDET is looking to add 1,000 new members. Join the WDET community and the fight to protect local news, to protect democracy, and to protect Detroit-made public radio. Go to WDET.org/save. We'll be right back here on the Metro. Stay with us.